Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Super English Talks. I'm your host, Jara, and I am so happy that you are here with me today. If this is your very first time listening, let me tell you something important. You did not find us by accident. You are here because you want to grow. You want to learn. You want to become a better version of yourself. And I want you to know that you are not walking this road alone. Every single day, we share new lessons and ideas with love because we believe that even a small piece of knowledge can change someone's life in a big way. So if you are ready to take the next step, to learn something new, to feel encouraged, and to believe in your own potential, then stay with us. Subscribe, and let's walk this journey of growth together, one step, one day at a time. I hope you are having a wonderful week wherever you are in the world. This morning, as I sat with a warm cup of coffee in my hands, I started thinking about a quiet habit that has been with me all my life. A habit that shaped the way I think, the way I speak, and even the way I see the world. That habit is reading. Now, maybe you're thinking, Jara, I already know reading is important. People say this all the time. And you're right. We hear that reading is good for our brain, for our English, and for our future. But today, I don't just want to repeat the same facts. I want to go deeper. I want us to talk about the real magic of reading, the way it can transform your heart, your mind, and even your life. So whether you're on your way to work, exercising, cooking, or simply relaxing with a cup of tea, let's begin this gentle journey together. Let's explore why reading is not only good for your English, but also food for your soul. Reading is like opening a window to another world. Think about your own life for a moment. Maybe your days feel the same routine, the same streets, the same people. Sometimes we feel a quiet wish inside us for something new, for a different place, a different adventure. Have you ever felt that? I know I have. When I was a teenager, my family moved to a new city. I remember feeling so lost. Everything was different: the people, the school, the streets. At school, everyone already had their own friends. I felt like an outsider, like I didn't belong anywhere. The weight of loneliness was heavy on my shoulders. But during those long afternoons, I discovered something that saved me: the library. The library became my safe place, my secret friend. I would walk slowly through the quiet aisles. The air smelled of old paper, and little specks of dust floated in the sunlight that came through the tall windows. I used to run my fingers along the spines of the books, feeling as if each one was waiting to tell me a story. One day, I picked up a big science fiction novel. The cover was shiny and bright, showing a picture of a strange planet. The story was about a young girl who travels across space to another world and becomes friends with an alien creature. The moment I started reading, something amazing happened. For those hours, I was no longer the quiet, lonely girl in a new city. I was an explorer. I was brave. I was traveling to new worlds and meeting new friends. The loneliness I felt in real life started to disappear. Reading gave me a place to belong, even when I didn't feel I belonged anywhere else. That is the power of books. That is the magic of reading. When we read, we don't just see words on a page. We live another life. We enter someone else's imagination. We borrow their eyes, their feelings, and their dreams. And little by little, reading changes us. It gives us courage when we feel afraid. It gives us comfort when we feel alone. And it gives us hope when life feels heavy. So today, I want to invite you to think about your own reading journey. Do you have a book that changed the way you think or feel? Do you have a story that gave you strength during a hard time? If you don't, maybe this is the right moment to begin. Pick up a book, any book. It could be a story, a biography, or even a simple children's tale. Let yourself enter another world for a while. You may be surprised by how much it touches your life. Remember, reading is not just good for your English. It is good for your heart, your mind, and your soul. That is the amazing power of a book. It's not just words printed on a page. A book is like a ticket to another world. It lets us travel through time and space without ever leaving our chair. With one book, we can become a king from 1,000 years ago. With another, we can be a detective solving a mystery in London today. Or we can be an explorer walking through snow and ice on the way to the South Pole. When we read, we step out of our own life for a little while and step into someone else's life. And this is not just fun or entertainment. It is something much deeper. Reading is actually an exercise in empathy, the ability to feel and understand what another person is going through. When we read about a person from a culture that is very different from our own, or a person who believes things we don't believe, something special happens. We begin to see the world through their eyes. We learn what it feels like to be them, to celebrate their victories, and to suffer their struggles. This helps us understand people in real life in a kinder, more open way. Let me share a real story with you. I have a friend named David. David worked in a large company, and one of his biggest fears was public speaking. Every time he had to give a presentation, his hands would get sweaty. His voice would shake. He looked out at the room and felt as if no one was listening. He couldn't connect with his audience, and it made him dread speaking even more. One day, I suggested that instead of only reading business books, he should try reading biographies and history, real stories about real people. So David began reading about great leaders, people like Nelson Mandela and Winston Churchill. These were men who had to speak in front of crowds, convince people, and inspire them during difficult times. A few months later, David told me something amazing. He said that reading about these leaders didn't just give him facts about history. It gave him courage. He read about their struggles, their doubts, and the obstacles they had to face. And suddenly, he realized something. If they could overcome their fear and still speak with power, maybe he could too. David understood that powerful speaking is not about memorizing perfect sentences. It's about believing deeply in what you say and connecting with people from the heart. Slowly, he started practicing this new way of thinking. His fear didn't completely disappear, but it became smaller. In its place grew a quiet confidence. And little by little, his presentations got better and better. That is another gift of reading. It trains our minds and hearts, not just our language skills. So here is a little practice for you. The next time you read a story or an article, don't just read quickly from start to finish. Try this instead. Read a few paragraphs. Then close your eyes. Picture the scene in your mind. What do you see? The streets, the people, the colors? Can you hear the sounds? Can you feel the emotions of the characters? After a moment, open your eyes and try to describe what you imagined. You can say it out loud to yourself or write it in a notebook. This simple exercise will help you connect the words on the page with living images in your mind. When you do this often, you will see another wonderful result. You will start learning vocabulary and grammar naturally, almost without effort. You won't feel like you are forcing yourself to memorize long lists of words. I remember when I was in school learning French. My teacher gave us 50 new words every week. I used to stay up late the night before the test, trying to push them all into my memory. The next day, I passed the test. But 1 week later, most of those words were gone. They vanished like smoke. That's because words learned by force don't usually stay. But when you meet a word again and again inside a story, when you feel the meaning in a real scene, that word becomes yours. You don't forget it because it is connected to an experience, an emotion, a picture in your mind. That is why reading is one of the best, most natural ways to learn a language. It feeds both your mind and your heart at the same time. The reason those words from my French class didn't stay in my memory was simple. They had no real meaning to me. They were just floating around like little pieces of information without a home. There was no story, no picture, no feeling attached to them. But reading is completely different. Reading gives words life. When you meet a word inside a story, it is not alone. It is surrounded by other words, emotions, and actions that give it meaning. Let's take an example. Imagine you are reading a mystery novel and you see this sentence. The detective stumbled upon a crucial clue in the dusty attic. Maybe you don't know the phrase stumbled upon yet. But look at the other words, crucial clue, dusty attic. Your brain starts to guess. Maybe it means he found it by accident, or he suddenly discovered it.
And you're right.
You don't even have to stop reading and open a dictionary. The story itself gives you enough information to keep going. Later in the book, you might see the word again in a different situation. He stumbled over a loose rock and fell. Now your brain makes a connection. Stumble is connected to tripping, falling, and also to discovering something unexpectedly. With just 2 examples, you begin to understand the word deeply. This is how language learning really works. It is far more powerful than memorizing word lists. It's also the same way children learn their first language. They don't study grammar charts. Their brains simply notice patterns, repeat them, and store them. Reading gives your brain the chance to do the same thing. The more you read, the more you start to feel what is correct without even thinking about rules. You'll notice certain sentences that just sound right. For example, you'll understand why we say he had finished his work before he left, instead of he finished his work before he left, even before someone explains the grammar rule. The structure feels natural because you've seen it again and again in real stories. I once had a student named Maria. She was at AB1 level and always struggled with prepositions, those tricky little words like in, on, at, for, and with. We practiced with exercises, but she still made many mistakes. Finally, I gave her a simple young adult novel and told her, "Don't worry about grammar. Just read for 20 minutes every day." A few weeks later, Maria came to class looking very surprised. She said, "Jara, something strange is happening. When I write now, I don't have to think about prepositions anymore. The right one just comes to me." She hadn't been memorizing lists. She hadn't been focusing on the rules. She had simply been reading. Her brain was quietly noticing the patterns and absorbing them until they became natural. That is the hidden magic of reading. I also have a friend named Hero who is learning English as an adult. His biggest struggle was idioms, those funny expressions that don't mean what the individual words suggest. He once said to a colleague, "I am pulling your leg to apologize for being late," thinking it meant a serious apology. Of course, the colleague just laughed awkwardly because pulling your leg actually means joking. Hero felt so embarrassed. But instead of giving up, he tried something new. He started reading a popular novel and kept a small notebook with him. Every time he saw an idiom, he wrote it down. For example, "He was pulling my leg." He also wrote a short note about the situation in the story, so he could remember the meaning more clearly. Hero kept adding idioms to his little notebook. Phrases like "she's on cloud 9" or "it's a piece of cake." But here's the important part. He didn't just write down the definitions. He wrote down the whole sentence from the book.
Why?
Because words and phrases are alive inside a story. When you see them in a real situation, they carry feeling, not just meaning. For Hero, this made all the difference. Instead of trying to memorize strange expressions, he started to picture them in action. So when he read, "He was pulling my leg," he didn't just see the definition. He imagined the scene, the smile, the playful joke. That's how it finally clicked. A few months later, Hero used one of those idioms with the same colleague who had once laughed at his mistake. This time he said, "That new project sounds like a piece of cake for you." The colleague smiled, laughed, and agreed. What had once been an embarrassing failure turned into a moment of confidence, all thanks to reading in context. So, how can you do this yourself? First, choose a book you actually enjoy. If you're bored, you won't continue, and reading will start to feel like homework. Pick something that makes you curious. Second, and this is very important, don't worry about understanding every single word. It's okay to skip words you don't know. Focus on the bigger picture, the overall meaning. This is called extensive reading, and it's one of the most powerful ways to learn. The goal is not to perfectly analyze each word. The goal is to get a lot of input and let your brain naturally notice patterns. Here's a small practice you can try. Find a book or an article that feels comfortable for you. As you read, pay attention to how new words appear in different sentences. Notice how a verb changes when used in another context, or how an adjective creates a certain mood. You don't need to test yourself or memorize. Just observe. This relaxed, mindful reading will help your English grow in the most natural and lasting way possible. And here's the beautiful part. As we absorb new language from books, we're not just learning to understand, we're also learning how to express ourselves. This is how reading makes your writing better, step by step. Think of it this way. Reading and writing are like two sides of the same coin. You cannot truly become a strong writer without being a steady reader first. It's just like a musician. Before they can compose their own songs, they listen to thousands of pieces of music. They absorb the rhythm, the structure, the emotion. Then, when the time comes, they can create something of their own. Now, let's bring this back to real life. Have you ever tried to write an email or a report in English and felt stuck? Maybe your ideas were clear in your head, but on the page, they looked too simple or too clumsy. I once had a colleague named Mark. He worked in technology and was brilliant at his job. When he explained things in person, he was clear and confident. But when he had to write for clients, his words fell flat. His writing was short, plain, and unconvincing. He would write sentences like, "The system is fast. It saves money." The ideas were correct, but the style lacked polish. It didn't sound persuasive or professional. Mark wanted his writing to sound confident and authoritative, but he didn't know how to get there. Then I realized something. Mark almost never read anything outside of technical manuals. His reading diet was too narrow. So I gave him something new. A collection of essays by a famous business writer, along with a magazine on a topic he loved. I told him not to study them, not to underline or analyze, just to read for enjoyment, and to notice how the authors connected their thoughts. A few months later, Mark showed me a report he had written. And honestly, it was like reading the work of a different person. Instead of writing, "The system is fast," Mark now wrote, "The new system streamlines our process, leading to a significant increase in efficiency." Instead of, "It saves money," he wrote, "By reducing operational costs, the implementation of this technology will result in substantial long-term savings." He had begun using more sophisticated vocabulary like streamlines and implementation. His sentences were longer, more varied, and his arguments flowed logically from one paragraph to the next, building a much stronger, more persuasive case. Without even realizing it, he had absorbed the rhythm of good writing. And this is the key. Reading exposes you to a wide range of writing styles and structures. You learn how punctuation can create suspense, how to build a convincing argument, and how to tell a story that truly captures attention. When you read a sharp newspaper article, you're learning how to organize ideas clearly and concisely. When you read a beautiful novel, you're learning how to use descriptive language and powerful verbs to paint vivid pictures in the reader's mind. It's a natural apprenticeship. You're learning from the masters, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph. And it doesn't just apply to writing. It transforms your speaking as well. People who read often speak more clearly and fluently. They have a richer bank of vocabulary and phrases to draw from, and they can express complex ideas with greater ease. Think about the last time you struggled to find the right word in conversation. Frequent readers encounter that problem less because they've already seen and internalized so many different ways of saying the same thing. Reading also teaches you how to structure your thoughts into coherent sentences and arguments, which is essential for good conversations, presentations, and even debates. So, here's a practice for you. Find a piece of writing you admire. Read it carefully, not just for the story but for the craft. Notice how the author balances short and long sentences and why they chose certain words. Then write a short paragraph of your own, maybe about your day or an idea you've been thinking about, but try to mirror the author's style. This isn't copying their ideas. It's practicing their technique. By doing so, you shift from being a passive reader to an active learner, consciously improving your own style. That's how you grow into a more confident writer and communicator. And beyond language, reading strengthens your critical thinking. True reading, the kind that changes you, isn't passive. It's like having a conversation with the author. You're not just accepting everything. You're questioning it, comparing it with your own knowledge, and searching for deeper meaning. This active engagement builds the mental muscle you need to analyze situations, solve problems, and make sharper decisions in life. I once had a friend named Leo, a business consultant, who discovered this firsthand. Leo's job as a consultant was to help companies solve difficult problems. But for a long time, he felt like he was only ever seeing one side of the issue. He would read a report, accept the data at face value, and move on. This limited his ability to come up with truly creative solutions. I suggested he start reading more nonfiction, philosophy, history, even books with opposing political opinions. The goal wasn't just to gather more knowledge, but to expose himself to different perspectives. A few months later, he told me it had changed everything. He had started asking questions while reading. Why is the author telling me this? What evidence are they using? Could there be another way to interpret this information? That simple shift from passive reading to active questioning transformed his work. Instead of just accepting a company's financial report, he began to challenge the assumptions behind the numbers. He saw patterns and connections that had been invisible before. His clients noticed the difference, and his career took off. This is what critical thinking is all about. Not just what to think, but how to think. It's the ability to spot an author's bias, their personal opinions or beliefs that color their writing. It's the skill of recognizing logical fallacies, errors in reasoning that weaken an argument. And it's the habit of weighing the quality of the evidence before accepting a claim as true. Let me give you another example. I know a young woman named Lisa who is very active on social media. She was constantly consuming news headlines, viral videos, and influencer posts. But over time, She began to feel anxious and overwhelmed. Everything she saw looked like a perfect, filtered version of reality. She felt like she could never keep up. I encouraged her to read biographies instead. She picked up the life story of a brilliant artist, then one of a successful business leader. To her surprise, both were full of struggle, failure, and doubt. These people hadn't achieved success overnight. It had taken years of effort, setbacks, and persistence. That was a huge contrast to the polished, instant success stories she saw online. Reading gave her a new perspective, a more realistic and critical way of looking at the world. She began to question the narratives on her feed and understood that the perfect image is rarely the full story. This shift made her feel more in control of her emotions and less influenced by what others posted. So, here's a practice for you. Find 2 articles from 2 different sources about the same current event. As you read, ask yourself, what is the main argument in each article? What kind of language do they use? Emotional or neutral? Do they use the same evidence? If not, what's different? Afterward, write a few sentences comparing them. This exercise will sharpen your ability to see bias, spot differences in reasoning, and think more critically about the information you consume. Reading is not only about learning new words. It is about learning new ideas, new perspectives, and new ways of looking at the world. When you practice reading, you don't just become better at English. You also become a more thoughtful and intelligent person. In our last discussion, we talked about how reading can help you think more critically. It makes you ask questions like, why is the writer saying this? What evidence do they have? Do I agree with them? By doing this, you train your brain to analyze information instead of just accepting it. This is very important, especially today, because we live in a world full of information, opinions, and distractions. And this brings me to another very important benefit of reading. It improves your focus and concentration. Let's think about a normal day in your life. How many times do you look at your phone? Maybe you are working, but then a message appears. You check it. Then you see a notification from social media. You check that too. Maybe you receive an email. You open it. Very soon, your attention is divided into many small pieces. This is the world we live in. We are surrounded by interruptions. Our brains are becoming used to these short bursts of information, scrolling, tapping, clicking, moving quickly from one thing to another. The problem is, this makes it harder and harder to stay focused on just one thing for a long time. Studying for an exam becomes difficult. Working on a big project feels impossible. Even having a deep and meaningful conversation can be hard because our minds want to jump away.
So, what can help?
The answer is reading. Reading is like a kind of training for your brain. When you sit with a book, you make a choice. I will focus on this one story or this one topic and nothing else. There are no ads, no videos popping up, no endless scrolling. Just you and the words on the page. This is a very powerful practice. It's like going to the gym, but instead of building muscles in your body, you are building your brain's focus muscle. The more you do it, the stronger it becomes. Let me share a story. I had a student named Alex. He was preparing for a very important university exam. He was smart, hardworking, and motivated. But there was one problem. He could not study for more than 10 minutes without getting distracted. He would open his books, but then he would feel the urge to check his phone. A message, a video, a quick scroll. Then maybe he would go get a snack. Soon, 1 hour passed, and he had only studied for a few minutes. He felt frustrated. He even told me, I don't think I can control my focus anymore. So, I suggested a simple experiment. I told him, Pick a book that you actually enjoy, something fun like a novel or a story. Read it for only 20 minutes every day. But here's the rule. Put your phone in another room. No distractions. At first, Alex said it was very hard. His mind kept wandering. He felt a strong urge to pick up his phone. But he pushed through. Day after day, he practiced. And then something amazing happened. After about 2 weeks, he noticed that he was able to get lost in the story. He forgot about his phone. His mind became calmer. Soon, this habit began to change other parts of his life. He could sit down and study for longer periods of time without being distracted. He realized that the feeling of wanting to check his phone eventually disappeared if he just kept focusing on the task in front of him. Reading had retrained his brain to concentrate. This new skill helped him pass his exams with excellent results. And even later, in his professional life, he continued to use this ability to focus deeply on important projects. Now, why is this important for you as an English learner? Because focus is everything. When you listen to a podcast like this one, you need to pay attention to the words, the rhythm, and the meaning. When you do an exercise, you need to carefully follow the instructions. When you learn new grammar, you need to keep your attention long enough to understand the patterns. If your mind is always jumping from one thing to another, learning will feel slow and frustrating. But if you train your focus through reading, everything becomes easier. You will be able to listen more carefully. You will understand more complex grammar. You will remember new vocabulary more quickly. So, in short, reading is not just about learning new words. It is also about training your brain to stay calm, focused, and present. And in today's world of constant noise and distraction, that is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. When you practice reading like this, you are not only improving your English skills, you are also training your brain to handle information for longer periods of time. This is very important because focus and attention are the foundation of becoming a fluent and confident English speaker. So here is a small practice I want you to try today. Find a book or a longer article that you're interested in. Then, set a timer for just 15 minutes. During this time, I want you to remove distractions. Put your phone on silent and leave it in another room. If you are on your computer, close all other tabs except the one with your reading material. For these 15 minutes, your only job is to read. Now, it won't always be easy. Your mind may start to wander. You might suddenly think of checking your phone or remembering something you need to do. When that happens, don't be hard on yourself. Simply notice it and gently bring your attention back to the page. At the end of the 15 minutes, take a moment to notice how you feel. Did you manage to get lost in the story? Did you feel a sense of calm and focus? If you do this simple exercise every day, little by little, you will notice a big change. You will improve your English, yes, but you will also rebuild your ability to focus deeply in a world that constantly tries to steal your attention. And this quiet focus that reading gives us has another beautiful benefit. It reduces stress. Let's be honest. Life today can be incredibly stressful. We have deadlines at work, exams at school, family responsibilities, and endless streams of news and information. Sometimes it feels like the pressure never ends. Many of us turn to screens to relax. We scroll through social media, watch a movie, or play a game. These things can be entertaining, but they don't always help us truly relax. In fact, the bright light from our screens and the constant flow of notifications often make us feel more restless, more anxious, and more distracted. Reading, on the other hand, gives us a different kind of escape, a calmer, quieter, and more peaceful one. Let me share a story. I have a friend named Anna who works as a nurse. Her job is very demanding. She works long hours, and every day she faces stress, responsibility, and pressure. By the time she came home in the evening, she was exhausted, but her mind was still racing. She kept thinking about her patients, her schedule, and the long list of tasks she had to finish the next day. Even though she was tired, she couldn't relax. She found it difficult to sleep. One evening, desperate for a change, Anna picked up a book she had received as a gift. It was a cozy mystery novel set in a quiet English village. She decided to try something different. Instead of scrolling on her phone, she read for just 20 minutes before bed. She later told me that those 20 minutes felt magical. For that short time, her entire world became the pages of the book. Her worries faded into the background. She wasn't a nurse with a heavy workload anymore. She was following the story of a detective in a small village trying to solve a mystery. The gentle rhythm of the words and the focus on the story had a calming effect on both her mind and her body. Very soon, reading before bed became her favorite habit. Not only did it help her relax, but it also helped her sleep better. And it's not just Anna's experience. Researchers have studied this effect too. They discovered that reading can reduce stress levels by up to 68%, even more than listening to music or going for a walk.
Why?
Because when you read, your mind is completely engaged in the story or the topic. This leaves very little space for your brain to worry about your own problems. The act of focusing on the text works like a form of meditation. It lowers your heart rate, relaxes your muscles, and brings a sense of peace. It's a gentle but powerful way to reset both your mind and body. For English learners, this is an incredible bonus. You're not just relaxing, you're also improving your language skills in a natural, enjoyable way. So, here's your practice. Tonight, before you go to bed, try what my friend Anna did. Find a comfortable place to sit. Pick up a physical book or even a printed article and put your phone and other devices far away. Set a timer for 15 minutes. Read longer if you like. Let yourself get absorbed in the story. Don't worry about every word you don't know. Just enjoy the experience. Notice how your body and mind feel afterward. This simple habit of reading before bed can improve not only your English, but also your sleep and overall well-being. And when the mind is quiet and relaxed, it often begins to create. This is how reading sparks imagination and creativity. A lot of people think creativity is a magical gift only a few are born with. But the truth is, creativity is like a muscle. It needs exercise. Reading is one of the best workouts for this muscle. Every time an author describes a landscape you've never seen, a character with unusual traits, or a machine that doesn't exist, your imagination gets to work. Your brain fills in the gaps and builds that world in your mind. I have a friend named Ben, a graphic designer. For a while, he felt stuck. His projects were repetitive, and his ideas felt flat. I suggested he read something different from his usual design books. He picked up a fantasy novel full of dragons and magic. At first, it was just a fun escape. But after a few weeks, something amazing happened. The vivid descriptions of forests and castles inspired new color palettes and textures for his designs. The complex storylines gave him new ways to organize information and tell stories through his art. He wasn't copying the book. He was using it as fuel for his creativity. The ideas he read became raw material for his own work, and soon his designs were more original, exciting, and inspired. His passion returned. And this isn't just for artists or writers. Reading sparks creativity in all areas of life. A book about a scientific discovery might inspire you to solve a work problem differently. A novel might give you new insights into relationships. Every page you read has the power to plant seeds of imagination. If you read a historical account, you might get an idea for a business or a fresh way to handle a personal challenge. Reading gives you a huge library of concepts, stories, and perspectives to draw from. It fills your mental shelves with ingredients you can mix and match to create something new. So here's your practice. Challenge yourself to be creative with what you read. Find a short story or a chapter from a book. As you read, focus on one part. It could be a character, a setting, or an interesting event. When you finish, close the book and let your imagination take over. What happens next in the story? If you've focused on a character, try to describe their personality and appearance in your own words without looking back. The point is to take ideas from the book and make them your own. This active engagement not only makes reading more enjoyable, but also helps you develop your voice and imagination, two of the most valuable skills you can have. Now, let's explore another benefit of reading. We've seen how it fuels imagination and creativity. But creativity works best when it's built on a solid foundation of knowledge. This is where reading expands your general knowledge and makes you a more interesting, confident person. There's a difference between being imaginative and being truly knowledgeable. The ability to speak intelligently about many different topics is a skill that reading builds naturally. Every book, article, or blog post you read adds a new piece to your understanding of the world. The more pieces you have, the clearer the picture becomes. And it's not only about novels, though they teach us a lot about human nature and culture. Nonfiction books, biographies, historical accounts, scientific articles, and quality news stories also expand your horizons. I have a friend named Ken who used to feel shy in group conversations. When people talked about history, politics, or art, he felt he had nothing to contribute. He's a wonderful person, but he often stayed quiet. I told him that good conversation isn't just about talking, it's about having something interesting to share. So I challenged him to start reading one nonfiction book a month on a topic he knew nothing about. His first book was about the history of coffee. He learned where beans come from, how they're processed, and the long journey they take to our cups. The next month, he read about the architecture of ancient Rome. Slowly, his knowledge grew. A few months later, at a dinner party, someone mentioned they had bought a new coffee machine. Ken's eyes lit up. He shared a fascinating fact about the history of coffee. That sparked a lively conversation everyone enjoyed. Ken wasn't shy anymore. He was confident and engaged because he had something valuable to contribute. This is the magic of reading. It fills your mind with an endless supply of facts, ideas, and stories, resources you can draw from in any situation. Reading gives you a deeper understanding of the world around you. You learn about the environment, different cultures, and the events that have shaped the world we live in today. This knowledge makes you a more valuable person, both in your career and in your personal life. It also helps you communicate more effectively in English because you have a rich foundation of content to support your language skills. For your practice today, try something new. Go online or visit a library and find a nonfiction book or a news article on a topic you've never explored before. Your mission is simple. Read for at least 20 minutes and learn one surprising new fact. After you finish, write that fact down, or even better, share it with a friend or family member. Teaching someone else what you've learned helps the information stick in your mind. If you do this regularly, you'll build your own personal library of knowledge and never run out of interesting things to say. I'm so happy you're here with me. We've just talked about how reading fills your mind with knowledge, making you more informed and engaging. This naturally leads us to another amazing benefit. Reading helps you connect with other people. Sometimes we think of reading as a solitary activity. You imagine someone sitting alone in a quiet room, lost in a book. And yes, that can be beautiful and peaceful. But reading can also be one of the most powerful ways to connect with others. A book can be the start of a friendship, a shared passion, or a conversation that lasts for hours. When you finish a great book, what do you usually want to do? Talk about it. You want to share your thoughts on the characters, your excitement about the plot, or your surprise at the ending. That desire to share a story is a deeply human instinct. Reading gives us endless opportunities to do that. I have a friend named Jessica who moved to a new country for work. She was feeling lonely and found it hard to meet new people. Conversations at her office were always about business, and she longed for something deeper. I suggested she find a book club, or even start one herself, focused on books in English. At first, she was shy, but she found a local group and decided to join. Their first book was a classic novel. At the meeting, everyone sat around a table with tea and coffee and began talking about the characters as if they were real people. Jessica laughed, shared her opinions, and realized that the book had given them a common ground, a safe and easy topic to start with. Through that book club, Jessica didn't just improve her English speaking skills. She also made some of her closest friends. She found people who shared her values and her sense of humor, all because they read the same story. I also think about my friend Liam, a single father struggling to connect with his teenage daughter, Mia. They had very different interests and spent most of their time in their own worlds, glued to their phones. One day, Mia was reading a popular fantasy novel and couldn't stop talking about it. Liam, wanting to connect with her, decided to read the same book. At first, it was just an activity, but soon it became something much more. Every evening, they would sit together, and after finishing the book, they talked about it for hours. They discussed the characters' difficult decisions, the big plot twists, and what they would have done in the same situations. The book became a bridge for them. It wasn't just about the story anymore. It was about the conversations, the laughter, and the shared world they had discovered. This is the power of a book. It can connect people. Whether it's a formal book club, an online forum for fans of a certain author, or just a casual chat with a friend about a book you both enjoyed, reading gives you a meaningful way to connect. Books allow you to have deep conversations without it feeling too personal at first. You can discuss a character's choices or feelings, which helps you share your own thoughts and beliefs in a comfortable way. Reading also teaches you to listen to other people's ideas and to respect different points of view. For your practice, try making reading a social experience. Find a friend, family member, or classmate who is also learning English. Agree to read a short article or a chapter of a book together. After reading, schedule a time to talk about it. You don't need a long conversation. Just start with simple questions. What was your favorite part of the story? Did you like the main character? What did you learn from this article? This simple sharing will make reading more meaningful and help you use English to build real connections with others. Now, let's build on the idea that books connect us to others and explore another amazing benefit. Reading helps you find your personal voice and sense of purpose. It's easy to feel lost in today's world, where social media and news can make our thoughts feel like copies of everyone else's. Reading is a way to break free. It introduces you to countless individuals who have thought differently, lived differently, and expressed themselves in their own unique ways. By reading a variety of voices, you begin to discover what you truly believe, what matters to you, and how to express your own truth. I have a friend named Elena, who is an artist. For years, she felt her paintings were just copies of popular artists she saw online. She had the skill, but her work lacked soul and a distinctive style. One day, frustrated and uninspired, she came to me for advice. I suggested she take a break from looking at art on social media and start reading instead. I recommended a mix of materials: poetry from different cultures, a biography of a famous architect, and even a nonfiction book about a scientific concept. Elena was skeptical at first, but she decided to give it a try. A few months later, she showed me her new collection of paintings. They were completely different from her old work. The colors were chosen carefully, the shapes were meaningful, and each painting seemed to tell its own story. She explained that reading had given her a new mental library of ideas, a deeper understanding of human emotions, and a fresh way to see the world. She wasn't just painting what she could see with her eyes anymore. She was painting what she had read, what she had felt, and what she now understood. Through the voices of other writers and thinkers, she had discovered her own unique artistic voice. This is one of the most beautiful things about reading. By listening to the voices of others, you can find your own voice and even discover your purpose in life. Think about a time when a book really inspired you. Maybe it was a book about climate change that made you want to help the environment, or a book about technology that sparked an interest in coding. Books can introduce us to ideas and passions we never knew we had. A single book can be the first step on a new path, a quiet spark that grows into a real passion. I have another example. A young man named Kenji was working in a corporate job. It paid well, but he felt unfulfilled, like just a small part of a huge machine. One weekend, he stumbled upon a book about permaculture, a way to design self-sustaining gardens and ecosystems. He had never thought about this topic before, but the philosophy of working with nature, not against it, inspired him deeply. Kenji didn't stop at reading. He started taking evening classes, volunteered on a local farm, and eventually left his corporate job. He began his own business, helping people design sustainable gardens. That one book had shown him a completely new path and gave him a sense of purpose he had never known before. Sometimes, the books we read are not just stories, they are maps that show us where to go next. Here's one more story. I had a student named Chloe. She was incredibly shy and rarely spoke in class, even though she was very smart. She felt her thoughts were not as important as everyone else's. I suggested she read a collection of personal essays written by different female authors. These were not academic texts. They were honest, powerful stories about everyday struggles and triumphs. Chloe told me that reading these essays felt like listening to a group of friends talking openly about their lives. She began writing in a journal, mimicking the author's style. Slowly, her own voice started to appear. Over time, she gained the confidence to share her ideas in class. She realized her perspective was unique and valuable. Reading those personal stories had given her the courage to find and use her own voice. So, for your practice today, I want you to do a simple exercise. Find a short story or an article to read. As you read, pay attention to how the author expresses themselves. Think about their voice. Do they use short, simple sentences or long, flowing ones? Are they formal, like a teacher or a news reporter, or informal, like talking to a friend? After you finish reading, try to write a single paragraph about something personal, your own belief, passion, or interest. Write it in your own voice, as if you were talking to a friend. Don't try to copy the author. Just focus on how you naturally express yourself. This small exercise is very powerful. It helps you think about how you communicate and allows you to discover your own unique voice. By doing this regularly, you're not only improving your English, but you're also learning more about yourself. You begin to see how you think, what matters to you, and how to express it clearly. Reading also helps in another important way. It improves your emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is a term we hear a lot, but what does it really mean? It's the ability to understand your own emotions, manage them, and also understand the feelings of others. It's the skill that helps you connect with people, solve conflicts, and build strong relationships. And this is something that reading can teach you. When you read a novel, you're not just following a story. You are stepping into the lives of the characters. You feel their happiness, sadness, frustration, or excitement. You experience their struggles and triumphs as if they were your own. This is like practicing life in a safe way. You can explore difficult feelings and situations without any risk. I want to tell you a real example. I have a friend named Priya. She is a manager at a large company, and her job is very stressful. She often felt overwhelmed by her own emotions and didn't know how to connect with her team. She struggled to understand why she felt anxious or frustrated and found it hard to communicate with her employees. I suggested she read a book about leadership and psychology, but she felt too tired for something so academic. Instead, I recommended a literary novel that told the story of a family going through difficult challenges. As she read, she started to relate to the characters. She felt their worries, their anger, their sadness, and their joy. For the first time, she found words to describe her own feelings. Reading about the characters gave her insights into her own life. She realized that some of her frustrations at work came from unclear communication, just like the conflicts in the story. Priya began to use what she had learned from the book. She started to identify her own emotions and express them clearly. She also became more understanding of her team. She could see their frustrations as opportunities to connect rather than problems. Over time, her leadership style changed completely. She became more empathetic, more effective, and more respected. Reading had taught her about the human heart, hers and others. Here is another example. I knew a student named Sarah who was studying abroad for the first time. She felt very lonely and homesick. Everything seemed unfamiliar, and she struggled with anxiety. But she found comfort in reading. She chose novels and stories where characters faced challenges and adapted to new situations. As she followed their journeys, she began to feel less alone. She saw how the characters dealt with difficulties, and it gave her ideas and courage to handle her own situation. Slowly, reading helped Sarah understand her own feelings and gain confidence in facing the world around her. Reading is not just about learning English or understanding a story. It's about connecting with the emotions of the characters, exploring your own feelings, and learning to understand the people around you. By practicing this, you become more aware of yourself and others, and your ability to communicate with empathy and clarity grows stronger. Sarah was feeling very homesick while studying abroad. She wanted to call her family and explain how she felt, but the words just wouldn't come out right. Everything seemed too big and confusing to put into sentences. Then she started reading a historical novel about a young woman who traveled to a new country alone, more than 100 years ago. The author described the characters' fear, loneliness, and small acts of courage in vivid detail. As Sarah read, she felt a connection to this character, even though she lived in a completely different time and place. The book gave Sarah a voice for her own feelings. The overwhelming feelings that had seemed impossible to explain were now just words on a page, part of a universal human experience. Reading didn't make her homesickness disappear, but it helped her understand her emotions, process them, and feel less alone. For your practice today, try this exercise. Pick a story to read and pay close attention not only to what the characters do or say, but also to how they feel. Notice the subtle clues the author gives about emotions. When a character is angry, how is it shown? When they're happy, what words does the author use? After reading, try describing a feeling you had today using some of the descriptive language you found in the story. This simple exercise helps you build your emotional vocabulary and understand both yourself and others more deeply. Reading also strengthens your memory and keeps your brain healthy. We often focus on exercising our bodies, but the brain needs exercise too. As we get older, many people worry about memory loss or difficulty thinking clearly. The good news is that reading is one of the best ways to keep your mind sharp. When you read, you are using many parts of your brain at the same time. You are decoding letters and words, processing language, and creating a mental picture of the story. You have to remember character names, important events, and details to follow the plot. This mental workout strengthens the connections in your brain, improves memory, and can even help prevent cognitive decline. Let me give you an example. I have a friend, Mr. Chun, a retired engineer in his 70s. For years, he worried that his mind was not as sharp as it used to be. He feared forgetting things and losing his ability to learn new skills. I suggested he start reading historical nonfiction, something he had always been interested in but never had time for. He began with a book about ancient Chinese dynasties. At first, it was challenging to remember all the names and dates, but he committed to reading about 30 minutes every morning. A few months later, he noticed something amazing. Not only was he remembering the history from his books, but he was also recalling events from his own past more clearly, details from his engineering work and family stories he thought were lost. Reading had unlocked his memory and restored his confidence in his mind. He even started talking with his teenage grandchildren about historical events he had read about, which helped him feel connected and more vibrant than he had in years. For today's practice, I want you to try a simple exercise. Find an article or a nonfiction book on a topic that has names, dates, or complicated ideas. It could be about history, science, or even a biography. Set a timer and read for just 15 minutes. After you finish, close the book or article and try to summarize what you remember in a few sentences. Don't worry about being perfect. This is not a test. The goal is to see how reading exercises your brain. Each time you do this, your memory, focus, and understanding improve a little more. Over time, you will build a personal library of knowledge in your mind, and you will always have something interesting to say in conversations. Welcome back for the last time in this series. I am so grateful to you for joining me on this journey into the world of reading. We've explored many reasons why reading is important. We have learned that books can open windows to new worlds and minds. They naturally improve our vocabulary, grammar, and writing skills. Reading also makes us better communicators and thinkers. We discovered that reading sharpens our critical thinking. It improves our focus and helps us relax in a stressful world. Reading ignites our creativity and fills our minds with fascinating facts and ideas. It helps us connect with others, share experiences, and build a sense of community. We've also seen how it improves emotional intelligence, strengthens memory and thinking skills, and helps us discover our own voice and purpose in life. As we end this series, I want to leave you with a final thought. Reading is more than just an activity. It is a way of life. It is an investment in yourself, a form of self-care, and a key that opens many doors in both your personal and professional life. You don't need to read huge books or classics right away. The most important thing is simply to start. A little reading consistently is far more powerful than reading a lot at once and then stopping. Think of it like exercise. You won't see results if you go to the gym for 6 hours one day and skip the rest of the week. But if you spend just 15 minutes every day, your health will improve steadily. Reading works the same way. 15 minutes a day is enough to improve your English and transform your life over time. I want to share one final story that brings all of these lessons together. I met a student named Marco. He was at AB1 level in English and felt discouraged. He thought his English wasn't improving, and he was tired of studying grammar rules. I told him to forget grammar for a month and focus only on reading for fun. I challenged him to find a book he genuinely wanted to read. Marco chose a popular thriller novel. The story was so exciting that he couldn't put it down. At first, it was hard because he had to look up many words. But he kept going because the book was so engaging. After a month, Marco came back to me, not to talk about grammar, but to talk about the story. He said he felt like he had been on an incredible adventure. He was sad when the book ended, and he had already started a new one. But the most amazing part was that while telling me about the story, he naturally used new vocabulary and phrases he had learned from reading. His speaking had become more fluent without him even realizing it. His sentences became more complex. He could describe his emotions and opinions easily. He hadn't just been studying English, he had been living it. Through this simple habit, he had opened a window to a whole new world. He had built his vocabulary, sharpened his mind, and discovered a new passion, all at the same time. So for our final practice, I want you to do something very simple, but very meaningful. I want you to make a small commitment to yourself. Go to a bookstore, a library, or even an online store and choose just one book. Only one. Pick the book that looks interesting to you, the one that draws your attention. It doesn't matter if it is long or short, fiction or nonfiction. The most important thing is that it is a book you think you might enjoy. Once you have your book, make a promise to yourself. Read it for just 10 or 15 minutes every day. You don't have to worry about words you don't know. You don't have to worry about how long it will take. Just focus on enjoying the experience. Let yourself get lost in the story. Let the words take you to a different place. This small daily habit may seem tiny, but it can be the most valuable thing you do for your English skills and for yourself. It is a promise of a lifetime of learning, growth, and adventure. Each day you read, your mind becomes sharper, your vocabulary grows, and your imagination stretches. Over time, you will notice changes in the way you think, speak, and understand the world. Thank you so much for listening and joining me on this journey into the world of reading. I have loved sharing it with you. Remember, it's not about how fast you read or how much you understand at first. It's about the habit, the joy of discovering new ideas, and the doors it opens for your life. Until next time, happy reading and goodbye for now.